It's honestly quite shocking when you think about it. I don't know why it's Russia right now, but at the moment it just is. Hi everyone, my name is Eric. I am a former competitive figure skater, and this is my figure skating reaction series. For those of you who don't know me, I am a 5-time US National Championships competitor through the senior level. I trained for about 15 years in the Chicagoland area with top coaches, including most recently Olympic coach Denise Myers. So long story short, I know my stuff. Let's get started. Guys, I don't hate Russia. Just need to put that out there first. Although this past week has got me one step closer. What I mean to say is, I definitely don't hate Russian people in general or Russian figure skaters. I mean, Russia has obviously had some of the best and most beautiful and amazing figure skaters in the world. However, the more time I spend thinking about so many of the different ways that the sport of figure skating is being failed right now, a lot of it does seem to come back to this one country. In this video, I'm going to focus on some of the primary issues in the sport of figure skating right now and talk about Russia's involvement. It will mostly focus on the women's field, which, by the way, I guess historically, or at least in recent history, has been kind of, in a way, the flagship event of figure skating. I mean, at least in the United States, but I would say also elsewhere worldwide, like unless there's some specific fields where like a Yuzuru Hanyu is maybe the main, or Nathan Chen is like the main thing in the men's event, but in general, like the women's events are the ones that I feel like, bring people to figure skating. The most, most of the figure skaters in terms of percentage of people are like girls and all that stuff. Anyways, so the women's field is very important to the entire sport as a whole, for sure. Kind of similar to gymnastics, I think, as well. Anyways, okay, so in no particular order, I'm going to talk about number 1, judge scoring and ISU corruption. Number 2, doping and sportsmanship. Number 3, abuse of young girls. Number 4, the tarnishing of international events. And number 5, diminishing artistry. Okay, starting off with judge scoring / potential ISU corruption. So when I think about this in kind of modern figure skating history, it really goes back to, or at least in my mind, the burned image of Adelina Sotnikova winning the Olympics in 2014. So I was actually thinking of making a video on this, and some people have asked, and maybe I will, but I saw that Kula King, the mysterious figure, made like a video that already pretty much covers all the points. So I don't know if I need to belabor it or anything, but long story short, for those of you who don't know or remember, maybe you blocked it out of your mind, back in 2014 when Adelina won, it was a huge upset over Yuna, and there were some very like glaring judging issues that kind of resulted in her winning. So the program component score, artistry, PCS, inflation, she was getting way lower before, and then she just kind of jumped up at the Olympics. But actually for me, the biggest glaring issue was like, if you go back and watch her initial triple Lutz triple toe, the Lutz is on an inside edge, which most judging panels have agreed with even in the past. So it should be an E, so it's a wrong edge call. It should be like way reduced in terms of, I think, even base value and also definitely GOE. And then the triple toe loop was definitely under rotated. I think back then they didn't even have Q. It was not even a Q, it was under rotated. So also should be reduced in terms of GOE, base value, all of that stuff. And some of those things combined, there's other stuff too, but really just made it like a very obvious, and I don't know exactly why for a lot of these things, but it was just so obvious that that was wrong. And that kind of was, in my mind, in the modern history, a little bit when the judging was really off and really started favoring Russia over other countries in the women's event. And then if you go back on my channel, there are so many examples of a lot of the recent Russian girls skaters, especially under Team Tudboritsa, who have just gotten insane scores, whether it's just GOE that's above everyone else for no really apparently that good reason, or really generous calls, or in terms of like if it's under rotated or a Q or a clean or whatever like that. so many things, or even like there's a one of my shorts that's blowing up a little bit more is like Alexandra Trusova. She literally did like a 2-footed landing and a spin out, and someone still gave her a positive GOE. It's just like, what is going on? And like that should not be happening at the Olympic level, and it's not just like a one-time thing. Like this has been happening for a while and with multiple of these skaters. So scoring and judging inflation isn't limited to Russia and Atari, but so far at the international level, I think it's been the most glaring / insane. Like I can remember like watching US Nationals this year and like really paying attention this time. And I have a video on some of the crazy scoring there as well, actually. And that's like extremely frustrating. Sometimes actually that even feels worse. But on the relative level of like, this is like international, this is at the Olympics, not a national championships where scores get whatever tossed around. So that's what's really kind of alarming and why this is a big issue in the sport of figure skating in general. Like if I kept going on about US nationals and the judging, which I could honestly, it's, in terms of the grand scheme of internationally, first of all, at the US women, for example, are not going to be placing in the top 3 at the Olympics. So it didn't matter as much. So anyway, so that's why I'm focused kind of more on Russia for this video and for this. And I'm not exactly sure why. Some people, people have all sorts of theories, but one that I heard recently from a pretty trustworthy source, but it's not confirmed or anything, but like kind of just the idea that Russia has bought out the ISU in a way. There's a lot of high-ranking people from Russia in the ISU. I don't know, Russia's bringing, I think, a lot of money to the ISU and also the sport in general, which is a good thing, like to be, funded and have more of the top skaters and talent, like all that stuff is good, but not when, and again, I don't know exactly what's going on there, but not when it comes at the cost of kind of the fairness of sport. Like I don't care exactly what it is, but it just needs to be fixed and changed. This corruption is just not good for the sport. It's not good for any of the skaters. Speaking of fairness of sport, that obviously brings us to doping and sportsmanship. So I don't need to belabor this too much. I have it in the other videos and whatnot, but obviously with the whole Kamila Valieva situation at the most recent 2022 Beijing Olympics, caught with the doping, not having a good excuse of why, and not saying that it's even, wasn't true, like admitting that it's true, but then kind of, and this is partially really, it's not exactly Russia's fault, but it's like the ISU and the IOC, or I kind of get the institutions mixed up, but the ones that are basically allowing her to skate, and there's like that, minor protected person rule and all that stuff. So like whatever it is, but allowing just the unfairness of sport to take place. And it's not just Camilla, obviously. In terms of, potentially it's a lot of the other skaters, who knows, but also just in terms of even like back in 2014 and before, there was like Russia state-sponsored doping. That's why they're ROC. And that's not just in the figure skating world, but kind of just in general, the whole letting Russia especially dope and keep competing and not really having any big consequences for it. Like that's just a huge problem in figure skating right now. People are, threatening to stop watching figure skating, and people don't think it's fair anymore and all of that. So that's obviously a huge issue in the sport right now, and a lot of it is being done by Russia, and the limelight is on them, even though again, arguably it's like the other systems and whatever in place that are letting it happen and that need to be held more accountable. And so kind of related to doping, but not exactly, is the abuse of young girls. Now, I don't know, there's a lot of kind of varying sources on this and different reports and all of this stuff, but in general, I feel like at this point, I would say it's safe to say that there is clearly abuse of young girls going on in Russia, in Atari's camp and all of this stuff. And by the way, obviously abuse of young children and skaters and athletes, whatever, goes on everywhere. But in Russia, again, it's like at the highest level. It's at the Olympics. It's on the Olympic podium in figure skating. It's with these really young girls, even younger than the other countries, for everyone to see. And it seems like very systematic in many ways. But the abuse it can be physical and mental. If you're talking about physical, thinking about all of these, interviews that you're hearing where they're not being let to eat enough, or not being fed enough water, or just the overtraining aspect, which potentially can also be related to the doping. Even just like the doping thing, like that could be harmful for skaters' health or whatever supplements they're taking or whatever, all of that kind of stuff. The training regimen, like how much, like of course you need to train hard to like win the Olympics and all, but what we like been hearing from reports, and you guys can like go read about this more, it really seems kind of frightening. Think about all the injuries that are going on. I know this was mentioned a lot in, I think Fran, the other YouTuber, has some video about exploitation of women's figure skating that's been popping off, so definitely watch that. I mean, notice how many of those skaters that we're talking about there are all from the same country. They're all from Russia. Of course there's in other places too, but yeah, there's just more, there's all the injuries, even more than other places, the fractures and the Daria's hip injury. Evgenia has permanent damage to her back. I don't know if Trusova's foot injury ever healed. Like all these different things that are just more than other places, and they're the youngest girls. And so I think that physical part is really, really important to be addressed. But also it's like the mental abuse, which also is very much in line with that, whether it's the eating disorder of Yulia Lipnitskaya. Also Polina Tverskaya was also really badly injured, another one to mention. So the mental kind of abuse or the mental kind of health effects that come from all the physical stuff, but also just the training and being scared of Atari and being like blah blah blah, whatever, all that stuff. Again, it does go on everywhere in the world, but it's at such a high level, so systematic, so in the face for everyone to see, that it's really a huge issue in the sport of figure skating right now. Also, by the way, kind of related but not, Russia is like fully using these young figure skating girls as like part of their politics and their political moves. So two like really distinct examples come to mind. One is kind of the whole very interestingly like feminist nature of Atari's camp and the whole thing, right? It's like, well, men aren't strong enough, so we're only gonna have the girls do the, like the girls are the one that can work harder. And then also kind of the whole thing, like, you don't like, raising the age limit, like you don't want like girls to do quads, like girls can do quads like even better than men. Like this is like anti-feminist. And also the fact that Atari is a female coach herself and all that stuff. I feel like there's a really interesting like kind of the strength of feminism underpinning the vibe, right, of the whole camp and all of that, of Atari and also Russia in general. And they're like the strongest in the world, and they're dominating all that. And that's great on the surface, but like, first of all, no one is saying girls and women can do quad, although actually their figure skating rules in the short program for senior right now are saying that, which literally makes no sense. But anyways, it is great, amazing that women and girls are pushing the boundaries technically, but not at the expense of potentially their healthy bodies and potentially the use of drugs and like all of that kind of stuff. That's not worth it, or all the injuries, like just that's not necessarily worth it. And also just like good, like healthy technique. We speak about the pre-rotation and the potential of that with injury. I don't know, all of that kind of stuff. It's like factually the Russian girls is like quads, and I'm speaking generally here, but the Lutzes and the flips, like I don't think anyone has done a really good technique. I'm sure people will do this in the future, but Trusova is kind of close, but it's still a severe pre-rotation. But like you look at Nathan's Chen's, for example, quad Lutz, which is great, and he can still do it for so many years without like huge injuries or like all that stuff. And also just it looks great and it's good technique. Anyways, so there's like costs of those things, and you know what? It's not feminist to be physically or mentally harming the young girls. So anyways, and then also the whole that tweet from, I forget which like Russian defense or some government thing, where they were playing Kamila Valieva's music. There's a little girl on the ice, and then, oh my God, if you guys haven't seen this, you need, like, someone needs to link it below, or like, you guys need to watch this. But then the Russian like army comes in and defends her from like the darkness and all that stuff. So that's so political, and that's, I don't know, and it's like victimizing themselves, like all of this kind of stuff. It's very interesting, and Russia's really using these girls, as their props for this kind of stuff. So that's really sad, and that's kind of taking advantage in a whole different way, especially again considering that they are children. A lot of them are children. Some of them, Elizaveta, you know what? She's my age, and she's considered ancient for whatever reason in Russia. Even though I'm like, am I ancient? Like, Anyways, but yeah, of course, this is also just mostly focusing on a Terry more so, which has been very symbolic of the Russian figure skating and yeah, like a symbol and the leader or whatever. Anyways, random comment that I wanted to put in there. Russia, like one of the organizations had some statement about the Russian athletes not being able to participate in like worlds and all of that. And they said something about, we consider this ethnic discrimination, which is so interesting because again, I talked about the whole kind of weaponizing the feminism thing. And then now they're also doing, it's kind of a very interesting, like anti like Western liberal, like flip mindset. I don't know. Well, I guess the conservatives in the US also do this a lot. Anyway, it's very interesting, but they're kind of saying, kind of like when people call it reverse racism or whatever, which is funny. Even it's like they're saying that even as like the reason that that's happening is because they're trying to like, in a way, like annihilate like the Ukrainian like identity and just have them be part of Russia, obviously. So it's like, I think that's, I don't know, ethnic because maybe they're the same ethnicity. I don't know. But anyways, Sasha is just like, wow, they're really trying to, it's just like a lot of politics, obviously. Moving on to number 4, tarnishing of international events. So obviously we have the doping scandal, all that stuff at the Beijing Olympics. It goes back to sportsmanship and just like the fairness of sport and all of that stuff. But then also like part of what prompts this video as well is obviously the recent news that Russian athletes now will not be able to participate in the Worlds because of the whole, obviously Russia invading Ukraine thing. And it's just like, okay, obviously Russia invading Ukraine, as I said in my other video, that is the obviously the most important part there is like the lives being lost and the violence and all of that. But going to the figure skating world, like that, like Russia itself and Putin and whatever are at fault for not having this full event with all the countries represented and all the talent from Russia. And it's really tarnished the whole event, right? I mean, it'll be interesting to see without Russia and without all the crazy scoring inflation and all of that, what will happen. But at the end of the day, like that is really sad that the Russian athletes can't participate. I do want to see, Anna Sherbakova do a quad flip again and just in all their programs and all that stuff. We do want to see that, and Russia has kind of ruined that as well. And like, I feel like whoever is going to win there will be like a small asterisk next to their name probably because it's like, oh, that was when Russia wasn't there and all that. But I don't know. Yeah. So just this whole messing up of like international events that are so important in figure skating. Okay, so the last one, number 5, diminishing artistry. I think this is probably the most subjective, and it's like whatever. Everyone, I guess, has different cups of tea or whatnot, but I would say that I blame IJS for this and ISU and whatever, like definitely. So again, with some of these things, Russia, it's like sometimes a symptom and not necessarily the cause in some ways. But like in this case, a lot of these Russian programs, especially if you start looking at the junior level, they start looking the same. There is in a way, and it's a sport, so there is in a way a formula to win. And I think that some of the best examples are Atari skaters. And also Nathan Chen is an amazing example where he's like artistic, he's good, but I wouldn't say he's people usually don't consider him like the best artist in the world or like in terms of like the skating or whatever, but he won the Olympics and he has a formula to win, right? You have the big jumps, obviously, and then you do the specific transitions that it takes to go in and out of the jumps to get those extra points. Or with the Russian women, you learn all of your jumps with your hands over your head, so you automatically like get plus GOE on all of them, even though it doesn't necessarily make it harder if you like do it a lot. Anyways, there's that whole thing. And with Nathan, for example, he doesn't necessarily do that much choreography, but then at the end, after he finishes his jumps, he does all that stuff. And so like that's giving you points. Like there is a formula. And if you look at Nathan Chen's, like, for example, layout throughout other like previous years, a lot of it is the same, which I totally get and agree with as a skater. Like you need like the same layouts and entrances and all that to like be able to land all the jumps and be able to do all that stuff. But again, that's kind of the IJS rewarding that and kind of saying like, you get a 10 in PCS, even though we don't think you're necessarily the best, skater of all time or whatever, you know what I mean? And so, yeah. And then with Atari's camp, it's the Daniel Gleichenhaus, like that guy, the choreography. And I don't know, maybe it's a personal preference. Maybe some people think they're very artistic, but I think that they have gone with a formula, which again, I understand in figure skating, but figure is a sport and like you need a formula to win, but it's also an art and a lot of people miss that. So anyways, this is why it's a subjective portion. Some people might not care about that. I kind of do, but yeah, anyways. like Russia, again, in this case, I would not say it's their fault. It's the symptom and a promoter of it. So these systems gotta fix a little bit. So before I end this video, I also do want to say, obviously, Russia has done some amazing things for the sport. So I just wrote a little bit about there because I feel like, I don't know, I don't want to do always like these negative videos, but I think it is important to talk about this. But, you know, Russia is pushing female strength and showing the capability of these girls doing quads. Like, that is so impressive. Like, people did not do that before. That's great. Demonstrating incredible consistency. That is something that the American skaters, for example, really lack. Their, you know, really hard work and their training and whatever, potentially, arguably, you know, with this whole doping thing, it's putting it under question a little bit, but showing that you can be so consistently strong in like dominant competitions, like that is really impressive, and gotta really appreciate Russia for that. Also showing how much like funding, in their case, like by the state, but funding for skaters can really increase the talent and the greatness of the sport. Skating is so underfunded everywhere. Like in the US, you just have to pay for it yourself pretty much. And like, and there's no money for it. You know, maybe at the top levels you can have a little bit, but there's just not much money in the sport. And like Russia is pumping money in there, and they are getting results, you know, both in terms of scores, but also just in terms of skaters doing really well. So that's also really cool to see. I would love the US government to sponsor figure skating and pay for everyone. I think that also would help with diversity in figure skating, and that's a whole other problem and a whole other topic. But anyway, so that's also really great. So obviously it's not all bad, but at this moment, you know, maybe I'm biased right now because of all the news going on and the Olympics that just happened, and you know, the three girls, like seeing them at the end and crying and all that stuff. Like, I think that it's hard not to focus a little bit on the negatives right now and really sit in it a little bit, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like this might be a turning point. I'm hoping it's a turning point in the sport of figure skating. I feel like we've been on the same track at least since 2014, if not earlier, even just when the IJS started and some of the unfairness of it all, and also Russia with the systems that they have in place to produce these results that they have. I don't know. I hope that it will start changing. Anyways, it's all very fascinating, and those are just pretty much the things I want to talk about today. Again, I know that some of this stuff can be said about other countries right now in figure skating, but I would say not all of them, not systemically, and not with as much impact and attention as with Russia right now. Again, hopefully a lot of these things will get better going forward. I certainly hope so. All right, that's all I have for today. If you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to my channel, and turn on that notification bell. See you next time.